So I want to share a story, an experience actually. Last year, winter, I got to experience a football match live, second time in my life. Why is the second time important? Because the first time I was so little I didn't remember. So I went to the football match, and there's a few things that I found interesting in that experience. And I assume that you can all imagine how a football stadium will look like. Maybe if you haven't been there, you have seen it on TV. So there's like this huge circle with the pitch in the middle. And a few things that surprised me is when I went there was this culture and this feeling that you don't get to experience when you're watching football on TV. There's people walking around, different people in their team supporter colored t-shirts or clothes with the scarves. And for example, there was this older man who was trying to buy a seasonal ticket because he's a supporter that has been there for a long time. And there was these families that come there and watch this football as a way of bonding. And I was just looking at these people and I was like, there is this community just gathering around here. And another thing that I noticed is when I entered there, you just get this feeling of a mass. You're just standing there, sitting there at your seat, and there's people behind you, there's people in front of you, and everyone is watching these people who are on the pitch. But a thing that happened that surprised me the most during that football match was a culture shock for me, because I was in Portugal, and the team that we were supporting, actually my boyfriend was supporting it, but I was just there with him. The team that we were supporting was losing, and they lost in the end. And the supporters around me, they started booing. And I was like, who are we booing at? Are we booing at the team that just defeated them? And then he said, no, these people are actually booing at our team. I was like, we are booing at our team and they're our team? Like, yeah, we expected them to win, but they lost. I was like, we don't do things like that in my country. Do you boo at your teams when they lose in your countries? Yeah? No? We're like, okay, they lost, but let's cheer for that. Let's cheer for them anyways, because I was thinking, how do these people feel? I mean, they're there playing, probably giving their best, and when they win, their supporters are for them, and when they lose, their supporters are against them. I mean, it's like a conflict of interest inside them all the time. And this kind of manifested when we watched the World Cup. And since Croatia was doing very well, sorry for that to some of you, we were watching the game, and at some point there was something bad, and we weren't doing very well. And my boyfriend, he was getting upset at Croatian players, and I was like, you're getting upset at them. They're giving their best. You're not going to get upset at them. It's like, oh, no, sorry. This is just cultural. And as we approach this text, I want you to have this idea of a stadium, of an arena. We are going into an arena. And let's start by looking at the text. And I want to introduce 4 characters or 4 groups of characters to you. First, we have the crowd. Second, we have the Pharisees and the scribes, we have the woman, and we have Jesus. So let's open the text, because if you have it, or look at the screen, because we're looking at them a lot. And we are reading from verse 2 to 4. Now, early in the morning, he came again into the temple. And all the people came to him, and he sat down and taught them. Then the scribes and the Pharisees brought to him a woman caught in adultery. And when they had set her in their middle, they said to him, "Teacher, this woman was caught in adultery in the very act." So the very first thing we are introduced in the text is this mass of people. They're going to Jesus, of course, because that's what they do. When Jesus comes somewhere, people come around him. And he was teaching them. And then immediately, we don't even get to settle in this peaceful atmosphere of teaching. Immediately, something breaks that continuity. The Pharisees and the scribes are pushing through the people, and they're dragging this woman with her, and everyone is turning around, looking what's happening, and they bring her to Jesus, and they put her in the middle. And people are trying to see because, since there's a lot of people, they're stretching their necks, they're trying to hear what's happening. And the interesting thing is, we're looking at, so let's try to imagine this situation. There's a woman in the middle, and since she has come, the circle is spreading out. The people are moving back to see what's happening, what is going to happen. And in the first row, we have Pharisees and the scribes. They are the ones who are judging. Jesus is also standing there. Behind them, we have that crowd that we got introduced to in the second verse. Is that all, though? Are these all the people that are looking at this event? No. I find this interesting because if we move through the pages or if we move back through this screen, there is us. And we are joining the centuries of people that have been looking at this event. So if we are in the arena, we are at the back seats, all the way at the top. We can see everyone. We can see Jesus, we can see the scribes and the Pharisees, we can see the woman. There is the crowd sitting just below us. There is the scribes and the Pharisees, and the woman, she's in the middle. Everyone looking at her. And the crowd is a very interesting phenomenon because just as in the football match that I went to, it's a very diverse group. And we are a very diverse group. So they're thinking, what's happening? And everyone is having an opinion of what is happening. Maybe someone just came there with a friend to see, okay, who is this Jesus guy? And then they encounter this woman event. There is maybe a faithful fan that has been there following Jesus all along. So it's like, okay, I know that Jesus will do something good with this. There is maybe someone who knows this woman and who knows that she has been captured. So they're walking around with her to see, okay, where are they dragging her? And there are maybe some people who are in a position who are with the scribes and the Pharisees and who are waiting to catch Jesus. And now we are zooming at the pitch. We are reading verses 3 to 6. The scribes and the Pharisees brought him the woman caught in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, they said to him, "Teacher, this woman was caught in adultery in the very act." Now, Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. What do you say? This they said, testing him, that they might have something of which to accuse him. The scribes introduce us to this woman as the one who has been caught in adultery. But I don't know if you have noticed, even before they introduced us, we already know that she has been caught in adultery. We know because we already know this text very well. But even if we didn't, we would be aware of that. And if you follow the text very closely, you see that the narrator introduces us to her as the one who has been caught in adultery. So our picture, we as the crowd, as the people who are observing this event, has already been painted. We are already expecting to see a woman who has been caught in adultery. And then in the text, there is a few more things that tell us something about her. In verse 3 also, she's described as a woman. And even if Jesus perhaps knows her name, we don't. Is her name important? Also in verse 3, we see that she was caught, brought, placed. She's passive. She's an object. And later on, we see perhaps something most interesting for me because I'm a theology student and we do Greek. There is this Greek word that says toi autas, and I know some of you are Greek scholars, so you might understand, but it says in verse 5, "Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned." It doesn't even say such women, or this woman. It says such. And you all know some members of such people, these people, those who are not us, those who are somewhere there, such, you know? So she is presented as a statue, as a pawn in this game between Jesus and the Pharisees. She's a tool. They're using her in order to get something out of Jesus so they can accuse him. And is this really about her, though? Is this story really about her? We don't know her story. We don't know if this really happened or didn't. We trust the Bible that it did, but we don't know. She hasn't told her story by herself. However, she's in the middle of the pitch, on the floor of the arena. She did not get a chance to tell her story. And she is exposed to all of our gazes, to all of our opinions, to all of their opinions, or maybe our disinterest. So, a recap. There's us, and there's a woman in the middle, and we are all looking at her. And then we have Jesus, and please bear with me. I know this seems like a short story in the Bible, but this is actually a big arena. So we're trying to see who is in there. So on the pitch, he's not sitting on the side, but he's not in the pitch, but he's perhaps sitting on the side, maybe like a referee. There is Jesus. And we all want to know what Jesus will decide. So what will Jesus do? And we read from 5 to 7. They asked him, they challenged him. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned, but what do you say? This they said, testing him that they might have something of which to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down and wrote on the ground with his finger. All of these people and we are expecting something from Jesus. We are expecting a response to this question. We are expecting to see what is going to happen to this woman. And I think this is kind of shocking. What does Jesus do? He just ignores these people and he stoops down. Probably no one can see him anymore, and he just starts writing on the ground. He completely ghosts them. And I think if we were there, I would probably be curious of, okay, what is he writing on the ground? Maybe he's writing something about me, maybe he's drawing a painting, I don't know. So I would probably be curious, but what we see in the text is that after this moment of just probably shock and silence on what is happening, they just continue to question him. And I find it's a bit interesting because, if he was writing something about them, maybe he would notice them, maybe they weren't all as close and notice that he was writing something about them. We actually don't know what he was writing. So let's look at the text. I know this writing is very famous and we have a lot of interpretations about it, but we're going to try to see what kind of an impact does it have. So they continue to question him, and then maybe he has enough of that. Maybe he is just saying, okay, maybe I have to respond to these people. So he says, whoever is without sin among you, let him throw a stone at her first. And what are our first reactions? Are you thinking, okay, nobody will do it because Jesus knows what he's doing? I assume that he knows what he's doing, but Jesus has just put the life of this woman in the hand of these people. And he is counting on them to be honest about themselves, and he's counting on them to be people of integrity when we actually are very suspicious about their integrity already. So he's actually putting this woman's life in a risk based on what these men will do. So we're all standing at the circle, maybe holding our breath. We don't know what is going to happen next. And what does Jesus do? Again, he bends down, starts writing on the floor. Woman there, probably closing her eyes, doesn't know if she will lose her life now or not. Verse 8. And again he stooped down and wrote to the ground. And those who heard it went one by one, beginning with the oldest, even to the least. And Jesus was left alone. and the woman standing in the midst. They all start leaving. They all start leaving. Why are they leaving? The thing is, we don't really know, but there are a couple of things we can perhaps think about. And as members of the crowd, as the ones who are observing, we would probably just come up with some reasons as to why are these people leaving now. So maybe they were afraid that Jesus will expose their sin in public. They were afraid, they didn't want to experience that, so they left. Maybe he did expose it in writing, as Ellen White tells us. Maybe he wrote their sins on the floor, so they just didn't want any more of that. They wanted to get away. Maybe they felt defeated because there was nothing more to the challenge. They did not find something about him that they would catch him for. But in any case, they were challenged to be honest about themselves. By Jesus saying that, they had to consider their story. And the fact that they were asked to be honest about who they are put them down from their powerful, distant positions, from their high seats in the arena. Because what happened? There was this woman and her story, and Jesus just asked, does any of you, among the Pharisees, among the crowds, among us, any of us in the arena, can any of you relate to this story in any way? Have any of you had a sin in your life? And what happens is that the arena crumbles before Jesus. Because there is no more power structure here. If these people decide to be honest, what they have to do? They have to step into the light. They have to step into the arena. They have to be a part of the people who are being observed. And there is a price to pay. And they're just thinking, do I want to do that? No. They leave. It's a reversal of a power structure. And I just want us to think about what happens in the arena. People are there, yes. Football players are there doing their thing. Dancers, singers, actors in the theater are performing. But underneath all of that show, underneath of what this woman is, she's standing there, underneath all of these Pharisees, there is vulnerability. Like the woman, vulnerability, the definition of vulnerability is the quality or state of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally. She was being in this position, and the Pharisees were possibly being in this position. And she was made to stand there, exposed to all of us. But what is her story? What is this story accomplishing in us? Jesus is asking the arena, who of you is without sin? Who of you cannot connect to this experience in any way? And anyone in the arena can, in some way. And there are no more high seats. And since the arena crumbled, what do you find there? You find there the people who are still holding on to their shields, who are still holding on to their power, who are still holding on to their distance. I don't want to be touched. I don't want to be seen. I don't want you to look at me and see something that I haven't shown you. And there are other people, perhaps like us, who see the story of this woman and who has seen her experience, and who is seeing that these Pharisees are also vulnerable under that shield, and these people are taking an opportunity for connection. Vulnerability creates an opportunity for connection. And what does that require? If we decide to connect with this experience, to say we are also like this, besides coming down from our seats, besides taking off our shields, besides deciding that we will not be distant, it requires us to step into the light. And in this story, it is about sin. But sharing any part of who we are, our histories, our successes, our failures, our fear, or doing something to show who we are, maybe like one of my friends said, showing up at the gym, or starting a painting class, or preaching a sermon, or writing essays again and again, even though you know you might not be very successful at it, is an act of showing up, is an act of being vulnerable. It's an act of stepping into the arena and being exposed to criticism, but it's also an act that creates an opportunity for connection. Because if I share my experience behind what I put on as my shield, you have an opportunity for connection. If these people have decided to share their experience, maybe not share it immediately, but put down their shields, there will be an opportunity for connection. And it didn't happen in this text. Brené Brown, who is an expert researcher in vulnerability, says, true belonging only happens when we present our authentic, imperfect selves to the world. And how can this be done? Practically. I appreciate when my grandma would tell me, I would appreciate when my grandma would tell me a story of when she was young and when she had experiences like me and when she was failing. I would not only see her as this great grandma who would just be good at telling stories or cooking amazing meals or just invite me to her house. I would see who she is. I appreciate when my church tells me that besides having great successes, it has great failures, because behind that screen, for me, there can be created an opportunity for connection, because I know that I have successes, I have failures. I appreciate when people turn up and they try, even though they know that they might fail. And I want to share another quote with you it is from the speech by Theodore Roosevelt, often called A Man in the Arena. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or when the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. Let's go back to the text, verse 9 to 11. Then those who heard it, being convicted by their conscience, went out one by one, beginning with the oldest to the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. When Jesus had raised himself and saw no one by the woman, he said to her, "Woman, where are those accusers of yours? Has no one condemned you?" "No one, Lord." And Jesus said to her, "Neither I condemn you. Go and sin no more." The community in the story has not been created around her experience. But we are creating a community around her experience because we can connect to her experience. But even though the community hasn't been created, the connection hasn't been established in this story, the people leave, the woman leaves, and there is Jesus, still standing there on the pitch. And we are following his story. We are following his story in the gospel. We're just continuing. And we find out that his story is the ultimate presentation of vulnerability. It is, and it always will be, the complete presentation of allowing people to see him. He is the one who stepped down from being God to be human, to be exposed to criticism, to be exposed to people who will hate him, but to also be exposed to people who will love him. He did not only heal, he did not only teach, he did not only give us blessings. He also gave us a story that we tell each other and that we connect over. And the ultimate place where the connection was established was at the cross. There, we often hear the ground has been leveled. The complete presentation of vulnerability, because we can just say anything about who he is. We can say he's just been weak, he's just been no one, he just died. And people have been saying that because even though he stepped down from being God, they just said, okay, this has not been the prophet we have been waiting for. But even though there are these people in the arena around him, there are also people in the arena that just look at his story and see he has given us an opportunity for connection and for love. Because of his story, because how we learn that he has given us love, the ground is leveled. We have an opportunity for equality, and we have an opportunity for connection. And this story is not only calling us to share it with each other and to create a community. It is also calling us to step into the arena. Because if we come to the cross, which is in the middle of the arena, we are going to have to put down our shields, share our stories with each other, and put down our shield and share our story with Jesus, because that is how the community is created. And that is how equality can be accomplished. Vulnerability without shields. The cross is in the middle of the arena. Are you willing to step in? Amen.